I'm Latha Sukumar, Executive Director of MCIS Language Services, a social enterprise in Toronto. I'm also a lawyer, a Vipassana meditator, a yoga practitioner, and a blogger. I grew up in India in a middle-class family, a middle child. It was an extended family where we lived with our grandparents. By the time I was 20, my career aspirations were largely ignored, and I was told that I'd be married off. And before I turned 21, I was married. When I was 23, I had my child, and I guess a culmination of all these experiences, I ended up having anxiety attacks which were quite debilitating, depression, as well as suicidal tendencies. However, I knew that I had to hold it all together for my little child. So I started to look at ways of coping, and I read some books on mindfulness practice and started to incorporate that in my life. So when thoughts arose that caused me anxiety, I just allowed them to arise and pass. And that went on for a little while. We immigrated to Canada when I was 25. It was hugely traumatic for me. I had a great sense of loss of control because I had no idea as to who I was and what value I could bring to this society. I had to remake my entire identity. Thankfully, I had my mindfulness practice, and this urged me to take on huge challenges. So I went back to school. I was able to do a master's degree. I was able to go through law school and successfully complete it. And when I came out of law school, I knew for sure that I wanted to do something that would help people and fight against social injustice. I really only didn't know what it was. Serendipitously, an opportunity came by whereby I would be executive director of a very small nonprofit located in a very gritty neighborhood in Toronto. I just had 1.5 staff, but the cause was really quite good. It was to help people, immigrant women who were experiencing domestic violence, access interpreter services while they went about putting their lives back together. This was a really good cause. I didn't have any lofty ideals as to what my future would hold. So when I joined, I still had this great sense of uncertainty about what would become of my career. I had no idea as to where the opportunities were. And I was also quite overwhelmed because I was now trying to straddle both a career in law as well as work as an executive director, since I wanted to keep my options open. What if this job was not there anymore? What would I do? So finally, I decided that I would stick with the job and I would establish a routine for myself. So this involved yoga practice, and I started my day with an hour's yoga practice from 6 to 7 and then went to work from there, put in a full day's work and came back. This routine as well as the yoga practice helped calm my agitated mind, gave me a sense of focus, and gave me a lot of clarity. So I persisted. In 2004, I attended my first Vipassana course. This was a transformational experience for me. It taught me to disconnect my thoughts from my reactions to them. I realized that all of the time what I was doing, as a result of which I was feeling this loss of control, was I was reacting to my own thoughts. So now, if I started to observe my reactions, then I could actually break that link between thoughts and sensations or reactions to sensations. I could also break my habit patterns and my conditioned responses. So I was not going to be living life as an automaton anymore, but I was going to really actually live life and experience it mindfully. 3 things that came out of this course that are worth mentioning are as follows. 1, now I was able to disconnect my thoughts from my sensations. What this meant is that I was no longer reacting to people's criticism of me. I was able to listen with an open mind and an open heart, knowing that whatever reactions that I expressed were actually to my own sensations and not to what people were saying. This meant that people could operate with me from a place of authenticity. The second was that I began to embrace change. Where I had been resistant to it, I had a realization now that change is inevitable and it has to be accepted, and it presents a lot of possibilities. Third, I realized that I lived life to uphold an image of who I thought I was and what I wanted others to see me as. And for the first time now, I was able to disconnect myself from that image and actually admit to my mistakes, make myself vulnerable, allow people to fully interact with me from a place of safety for them. This was huge. I'm an immigrant woman, and I relate to the experience of newcomers to Canada because of what I've gone through. And I know that I felt a great sense of loss of control, helplessness. And the only way that I was able to overcome it is truly getting in touch with myself, who I truly am. And doing this, I was able to actually bring together my passion, my skills, my aptitude, and carve out a career for myself rather than wait for things to happen to me. I believe that a lot of us come to this country and remake ourselves. And I really think that the lessons and the insights that I have learned and can bring to this will benefit a lot of people both here locally as well as globally.
Nete na kasike tu